Yeah, hi everyone. Just to quickly introduce myself. So I'm Tristan. I'm an open research librarian at the University of Manchester. And our next speaker is Judith Winters from the University of York, who's the editor of Internet Archaeology. So over to you, Judith.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can see my screen. I hope that works. There we go. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak today. Yeah, I'm Judith Winters. I'm the editor of Internet Archaeology. So I'm going to talk about the journal and about our approach to data publication and specifically data papers. Internet Archaeology is a peer-reviewed journal for archaeology based at the University of York. Internet Archaeology has been publishing online since 1996, so it's never had a print counterpart. And I am a bit of a jack of all trades, so I'm editor, production, social media, everything, 4 days a week. So the journal is open access and publishes a wide range of content, from excavation reports to methodological articles, all the way through to large image-rich, data-rich monographs. And I'm interested in pushing at the boundaries of publication within all of the outputs that we create. But I encourage authors to consider using the medium of publication and to incorporate their data, whether that's 3D models, video, audio, visualizations, but also where possible to document and to deposit the underlying data with the Archaeology Data Service. The ADS are the National Digital Repository for Archaeology and Heritage Data, and they're also, in fact, based at the University of York, and we work very closely together with the ADS. So publishing data as part of articles is something that I've always encouraged, trying to encourage people to do what can't be done in print. So as you can see from these examples, we have a map of visualization from sites under discussion with links externally going to a database of Roman inscriptions, zoomable images, 3D models, map overlays, video data. So I've always been open to integrating data and visualizations to experiment in forms of publication. The point I'm trying to make here then is that data publishing in Internet Archaeology is something that's more integral than supplemental. And so where I can, I do like to be able to link through from publications through to the data in the digital archives. In the majority of cases, although not exclusively, we've worked with other archives as well. That archive is often the ADS. So while on the face of it, we look like two separate entities, we're really technically intertwined. So you can sort of think of the Internet Archaeology as being the publishing wing of the ADS. We're sort of a linked ecosystem, if you like, of publication and archiving. So the idea that we've always tried to, the ideal rather, that we've always tried to achieve is that Internet Archaeology content provides the narrative, the analysis, the story, while the ADS provides the secure long-term storage for the raw evidence for the data. So the aim has always been for readers to be able to move from a conclusion in an article to interrogating the primary data in the archive. So trying to blur the boundary between the article and the archive. That's the ideal. Whether we achieve it, of course, is another matter. So on to data papers then. Data papers are therefore, I see them as an extension of this integrated approach that we take to data. They're part of the mix for Internet Archaeology, so they're definitely not the main focus. And as you've seen, and you'll probably imagine, there are quite a lot of specific and dedicated data journals for archaeology out there, but Internet Archaeology is really a mix of everything. We don't just publish data papers by any stretch of the imagination. I think we've published about 20 to 25 since we've been doing them. So, 2 or 3 a year, I suppose, is the average. So a data paper, on the face of things, I think I see it as quite a functional publication. It's a short, as Vanessa's already described, really, it's a short published description about the data that's held somewhere else, that's held in a digital archive. I see it as acting as a signpost or an additional window onto that data. And I often liken the data paper to sitting on top of the sitting on top of an archive and something that links down into the data. So that visualizing and the stratigraphy is something that I think really resonates with archaeologists. I think it does try to help conceptualize what we're trying to achieve with being able to link these resources together. Although a data paper should, of course, be able to stand alone, but it can also be a very useful companion publication and can sit easily alongside other digital outputs. So in the past, we've published quite an extensive monograph, an associated data paper, as well as a digital archive that sits on ADS. So it's something that kind of can link all of these things together. And the aim, obviously, is to raise awareness and describe the contents of the data that's held in the archive and describe the methods used to create it. But most importantly for me, are exploring the further avenues of research that are possible with the data. And that's the data, what the data's reuse potential is. So authors are asked to address this in a section specifically on reuse, but where we perhaps deviate from other journals. I'm not saying we're the only ones that do this, but I'm not aware of any other journals that do this. We also provide a referee statement by someone completely unconnected to the project, which we solicit once the data paper's been accepted. And then it is published alongside the data paper, which enhances and adds to what else this data could be used for. So like I say, that's a specific feature about the journal. And in this case, it was the aerial survey principal from Historic England was asked to comment on the data paper, on the data for this particular example. I was also asked by Tom when he asked me to contribute today to think about some advice to authors. So this will be quite specific to the journal, but I hope some of it might be useful to you. I definitely like that our data papers are kept quite short. They follow quite a strict template, including the reuse section, as I've just mentioned. Although I should say that we have sometimes deviated from our own self-imposed rules, and we've taken a couple of longer, more image-rich data papers where it seemed appropriate. I'm thinking in particular of a data paper that was discussing visualizations or photogrammetry, but interactive photogrammetry that had been taken at the chambered tomb at Maze How in Orkney. And the authors were creating RTI images of the runes that were later than when the tomb was actually built, but later Viking runes had been discovered inside the tomb, and there were visualizations where you could draw the light source around it so you could highlight the runes on the stone. So we do sometimes make exceptions to that and take longer papers as well. But the main prerequisite for me is that the related deposit to ADS or another repository should either be made before or at around the same time of the submission to the journal, just so that the most can be made of the links between the two resources. So it's really quite a practical advice. Often the information that you're compiling, certainly for an ADS archive anyway, is something that can often be reused in the data paper. So publishing a data paper, I think, goes quite easily hand in hand with the archive because you've already done the most of the hard work. And so my main thing I want to ensure is that there are reciprocal links between the resources. So at the very least, we ensure that the archive or the data paper points to the archive, but also that the archive also has a reciprocal link back up to the data paper. But as I've already mentioned, some richer, deeper links are also possible. And so there are some instances where we've been able to link into deeper sections of the archive from within the data paper, so it doesn't just go to the top landing page. And also, a cost, Internet Archaeology is APC. It uses an APC model, but we've found that authors really try to encourage them to consider the cost of the data paper in at the beginning of the project at the same time when you're also factoring the cost of the archive deposit. And in fact, we ADS often ask when a deposit is made if there is a requirement or request to do a data paper, and it can be costed in at the early stages of the project, as opposed to happening much later down the line, which often means that the funding is a bit harder to find. So that would be some advice to authors. So I'm just going to move on really to an example of an already published data paper. This is on excavations at Pontefract Castle. Pontefract Castle is a site in Northern England, has a fantastic castle, and it describes the project data from a community-focused archaeological investigation at Pontefract. So there's a wide range of data in the archive, which consists of site reports, finds reports, school workshop resources, images, spreadsheets, 3D models, video, and site records. And the project is a case study in running an archaeological investigation with an embedded programme of public engagement. The data paper then that was published in Internet Archaeology includes the referee statement, in this case by Neil Redfern, who was the Historic England regional investigator at the time. The data paper was also illustrated by one of, you can see it down here at the bottom, one of the 3D models that was also hosted in the archive. But actually I mention it because I think these small, not small, but these, you know, the addition of these sort of visualizations and something like a 3D model are actually really, really do help draw users into the data. And in fact, and we certainly see that there's more traffic running to the archive, perhaps, or we suggest that there's more archive running to the more traffic running to the archive because of these, you know, these visualizations that help draw people into the content, that it's not just a page of text that you're faced with, that there's something more engaging there. And when it's interactive and people can play with it and spin it around, you know, it always helps. In this particular case, the identification of the mason's marks were key to dating the construction of the gatehouse. So in the archive, vector files of the masonry elevations were provided to the archive to use as a comparative data set, but also to enable future evidence if further marks or masonry details are found. The animal bone assemblage for this site also had potential for further analysis as an example of food consumption in medieval high status buildings. And I think this is another thing that highlights the value of data papers and the reuse potential section in particular, because we've found that they've sometimes been used as pointers for students who are looking for dissertation topics. So I think that's a really great way in, and it's another way of drawing people into high quality data from within the data paper. So to recap then, I see data papers as publications that promote the visibility of data sets, and it makes it easier for others to discover and access that data, and it encourages data sharing and transparency. I see it as a wave that drives people towards the data, and as I've already said, the provision of layers of data, it certainly suits the discipline of archaeology. We're all about making layers, or we're all about the layers and making links and making connections. So we're seeing this in our digital outputs too, and that can help us widen the data paper appeal. And as Vanessa also mentioned, it's publishing a dedicated data paper enables people to receive that proper credit for their work, that formal recognition. And the addition of the referee statement also highlights, I think, the usually unseen but vital work of the referee. Data papers can also ensure that documentation is there to support that reuse, and information concerning metadata, methodologies, etc. It all makes it easier for people to understand and reuse the data, which is especially beneficial for really complex data sets that will require documentation and context for accurate interpretation. So this is all going towards supporting reproducibility and aligning with the principles of open science. And finally, I think it enables researchers to make connections and to collaborate well-documented data sets are more likely to be used in secondary analyses and to inspire collaborative studies. So this in turn contributes to the efficient use of research resources, as existing data sets can often be reused for new insights and reduce the need for redundant data collection. So hopefully you've learned something about Internet Archaeology's approach and what our data papers look like. So I'll end there, but I'll be happy to answer any questions at the Q&A.